The 8th book of the Aeneas. The argument. The war being now begun, both the generals make all possible preparations. Turnus sends to Diomed. Æneas goes in person to beg succors from Evander and the Tuscans. Evander receives him kindly, furnishes him with men, and sends his son Pallas with him. Vulcan, at the request of Venus, makes arms for her son Æneas, and draws on his shield the most memorable actions of his posterity. Then saw 2 heaps of ruins, whence they stood 2 stately towns, on either side the flood, Saturnia's, and Janicula's remains, and either place the founder's name retains. Discoursing thus together, there resort where poor Evander kept his country court. They view the ground of Rome's litigious hull, whence oxen lowed, where now the lawyers bull. Then, stooping, through the narrow gate they pressed, when thus the king bespoke his Trojan guests. Mean as it is, this palace, and this store, receive at all sides, then a conqueror. Dare to be poor, accept our homely food, which feasted him, and emulate a god. Then underneath the lowly roof he led the weary prince, and laid him on a bed, the stuffing leaves, with hides of bears o'erspread. Now night had shed her silver dews around, and with her sable wings embraced the ground, when love's fair goddess, anxious for her son, new tumults rising, and new wars begun, couched with her husband in his golden bed, with these alluring words invokes his aid, and, that her pleasing speech his mind may move, inspires each accent with the charms of love. Well, cruel fate conspired with Grecian poors, to level with the ground the Trojan tours. I ask it not aid unhappy to restore, nor did the succor of thy skill implore. Nor are good the labors of my lord in vain, a sinking empire longer to sustain, though much I owed to Priam's house, and more the dangers of Æneas did deplore. But now, by Jove's command, and fate's decree, his race is doomed to reign in Italy. With humble suit I beg thy needful art, O still propitious poor, that rules my heart. A mother kneels a suppliant for her son. By Thetis and Aurora thou wert wont to forge impenetrable shields, and grace with fated arms a less illustrious race. Behold, what haughty nations are commined against the relics of the Phrygian kind, with fire and sword my people to destroy, and conquer Venus twice, in conquering Troy. She said, and straight her arms, of snowy hue, about her unresolving husband threw. Her soft embraces soon infused desire, his bones and marrow sudden warmth inspire, and all the godhead feels the wonted fire. Not half so swift the rattling thunder flies, or forky lightnings flash along the skies. The goddess, proud of her successful wiles, and conscious of her form, in secret smiles. Then thus the poor, obnoxious to her charms, panting, and half dissolving in her arms. Why seek your reasons for a cause so just, or your own beauties or my love distrust? Long since, had you required my helpful hand, artificer and art you might command, to labor arms for Troy. Nor Jove, nor fate, confided their empire to so short a date. And, if you now desire new wars to wage, my skill I promise, and my pains engage. Whatever melting metals can conspire, or breathing bellows, or the forming fire, is freely yours. Your anxious fears remove, and think no task is difficult to love. Trembling he spoke, and, eager of her charms, he snatched the willing goddess to his arms, till in her lap infussed, he lay possessed of full desire, and sunk to pleasing rest. Now when the night or middle race had rode, and his first slumber had refreshed the god, the time when early housewives leave the bed, when living embers on the hearth they spread, supplied the lamp, and called the maids to rise with yawning mouths, and with half-opened eyes. They plied the distaff by the winking light, and to their daily labor at the night. Thus frugally they earn their children's bread, and uncorrupted keep the nuptial bed, not less concerned, nor at a later hour, rose from his downy couch the forging poor. Sacred to Vulcan's name, an isle there lay, betwixt Sicilia's coasts and Lippor, raced high on smoking rocks, and, deep below, in hollow caves the fires of Aetna glow. The Cyclops here their heavy hammers deal, loud strokes, and hissings of tormented steel, are heard around. The boiling waters roar, and smoky flames throw fuming tunnels soar. Hither the father of the fire, by night, through the brown air precipitates his flight. Under eternal anvils here he found the brethren beating, and the blows go round. A load of pointless thunder now there lies before their hands, to ripen for the skies. These darts, for angry Jove, they daily cast, consummate on mortals with prodigious waste. 3 rays of wrath and rain, of fire 3 more, of winged southern winds and cloudy store as many parts, the dreadful mix your frame, and fears are added, an avenging flame. Inferior ministers, for Mars, repair his broken axletrees in blunted war, and send him forth again with furbished arms, to wake the lazy war with trumpets' loud alarms. The rest refresh the scaly snakes that fold the shield of Pallas, and renew their gold. Full on the crest the Gorgon's head they place, with eyes that roll in death, and with distorted face. My sons, said Vulcan, set your tasks aside, your strength and master skill must now be tried. Arms for a hero forge, arms that require your force, your speed, and all your forming fire. He said. They set their former work aside, and their new toils with eager haste divide. A flood of molten silver, brass, and gold, and deadly steel, in the large furnace rolled. Of this, their artful hands a shield prepare, alone sufficient to sustain the war. 7 orbs within a spacious round they close. One stirs the fire, and one the bellows blows. The hissing steel is in the smithy drowned, the grot with beaten anvils groans around. By turns their arms advance, in equal time, by turns their hands descend, and hammers chime. They turn the glowing mass with crooked tongs, the fiery work proceeds, with rustic songs. While, at the Lemnian god's command, they urge their labors thus, and ply Aeolian forge, the cheerful morn salutes Evender's eyes, and songs of chirping birds invite to rise. He leaves his lowly bed. His buskins meet above his ankles, sandals sheathe his feet. He sets his trusty sword upon his side, and o'er his shoulder throws a panther's hide. 2 menial dogs before their master pressed. Thus clad, and guarded thus, he seeks his kingly guest. Mindful of promised aid, he mends his pace, but meets Æneas in the middle space. Young Pallas did his father's steps attend, and truer chates waited on his friend. They join their hands, a secret seat they choose, Arcadian first their former talk renews. Undaunted prince, I never can believe the Trojan Empire lost, while you survive. Command assistance of a faithful friend, but feeble are the succors I can send. Our narrow kingdom here the Tiber bounds, that other side the Latian state surrounds, insults our walls, and wastes our fruitful grounds. But mighty nations I prepare, to join their arms with yours, and aid your just design. You come, as by your better genius sent, and fortune seems to favor your intent. Not far from hence there stands a hilly town, of ancient building, and of high renown, torn from the Tuscans by the Lydian race, who gave the name of Care to the place, once Agilina called. They flourished long, in pride of wealth and warlike people strong, till cursed Mezentius, in a fatal hour, assumed the crown, with arbitrary poor. What words can paint those execrable times, the subjects' sufferings, and the tyrant's crimes? That blood, those murthers, O ye gods, replace on his own head, and on his impious race. The living and the dead at his command were coupled, face to face, and hand to hand, till, chocked with stench, and loathed embraces tied, the lingering wretches pinned away and died. Thus plunged in ills, and meditating more the people's patience, Turd no longer bore the raging monster, but with arms beset his house, and vengeance and destruction threat. They fire his palace. While the flame ascends, they force his guards, and execute his friends. He cleaves the crowd, and, favored by the night, to Turnus' friendly court directs his flight. By just revenge the Tuscans set on fire, with arms, their king to punishment require. Their numerous troops, now mustered on the strand, my council shall submit to your command. Their navy swarms upon the coasts, they cry to hoist their anchors, but the gods deny. An ancient augur, skilled in future fate, with these foreboding words restrains their hate. Ye brave in arms, ye Lydian blood, the floor of Tuscan youth, and choice of all their poor. Them just revenge against Mezentius' arms, to seek your tyrant's death by lawful arms. Know this, no native of our land, may lead this poorful people, seek a foreign head. Awed with these words, in camps they still abide, and wait with longing looks their promised guide. Tarchon, the Tuscan chief, to me has sent their crown, and every regal ornament. The people join their own with his desire, and all my conduct, as their king, require. But the chill blood that creeps within my veins, and age, and listless limbs unfit for pains, and a soul conscious of its own decay, have forked me to refuse imperial sway. My Pallas were more fit to mount the throne, and should, but he's a Sabine mother's son, and half a native. But, in you, combine a manly vigor, and a foreign line. Where fate and smiling fortune shew the way, pursue the ready path to sovereign sway. The staff of my declining days, my son, shall make your good or ill success his own. In fighting fields from you shall learn to dare, and serve the hard apprenticeship of war. Your matchless courage and your conduct view, and early shall begin to admire and copy you. Besides, 200 horse he shall command, though few, a warlike and well-chosen band. These in my name are listed, and my son as many more has added in his own. Scarce had he said, it chastened his guest, with downcast eyes, their silent grief expressed, who, short of succors, and in deep despair, shook at the dismal prospect of the war. But his bright mother, from a breaking cloud, to cheer her issue, thundered thrice aloud, thrice forky lightning flashed along the sky, and terrain trumpets thrice were heard on high. Then, gazing up, repeated peals they hear, and, in a heathen serene, refulgent arms appear, reddening the skies, and glittering all around, the temperate metals clash, and yield a silver sound. The rest stood trembling, struck with awe divine. Æneas only, conscious to the sign, presaged event, and joyful viewed, above, accomplished promise of the Queen of Love. Then, to Arcadian king. This prodigy, dismiss your fear, belongs alone to me. He even calls me to the war. Expected sign is given of promised aid, and arms divine. My goddess mother, whose indulgent care foresaw the dangers of the growing war, this omen gave, when bright Vulcanian arms, faded from force of steel by Stygian charms, suspended, shone on high. She then foreshowed approaching fights, and fields to float in blood. Turnus shall dearly pay for faith forsworn, and core, and swords, and shields, on Tiber born, shall choke his flood. Now sound the loud alarms, and, Latian troops, prepare your perjured arms. he said, and, rising from his homely throne, the solemn rites of Hercules begun, and on his altars whacked the sleeping fires, then cheerful to his household gods retires, there offers chosen sheep. Arcadian king and Trojan youth the same oblations bring. Next, of his men and ships he makes review, draws out the best and ablest of the crew. Down with the falling stream the refuse run, to raise with joyful news his drooping son. Steeds are prepared to mount the Trojan band, who wait their leader to the Tyrian land. A sprightly courser, fairer than the rest, the king himself presents his royal guest. A lion's hide is back and limbs infold, precious with studded work, and paws of gold. Fame through the little city spreads a loud intended march, amid the fearful crowd. The matrons beat their breasts, dissolve in tears, and double their devotion in their fears. The war at hand appears with more affright, and rises every moment to the sight. Then old Evander, with a close embrace, strained his departing friend, and tears o'erflow his face. What he even said he, my strength and youth recall, such as I was beneath Prienus' wall, then when I made the foremost foes retire, and set whole heaps of conquered shields on fire. When hairless in single fight I slew, whom with 3 lives Pharaonia did endue, and thrice I sent him to the Stygian shore, till the last ebbing soul returned no more such if I stood renewed, not these alarms, nor death, should rend me from my Pallas arms, nor proud Mezentius, thus unpunished. Boast his rapes and murthers on the Tuscan coast. You gods, and mighty Jove, in pity bring relief, and hear a father and a king. If fate and you reserve these eyes, to see my son return with peace and victory, if the loved boy shall bless his father's sight, if we shall meet again with more delight, then draw my life in length, let me sustain, in hopes of his embrace, the worst of pain. But if your heart decrees, which, oh, I dread, have doomed to death his undeserving head, this very moment, let me die. All hopes and fears in equal balance lie, while, yet possessed of all his youthful charms, I strain him close within these aged arms, before that fatal news my soul shall wound. He said, and, swooning, sunk upon the ground. His servants bore him off, and softly laid his languished limbs upon his homely bed. The horsemen march, the gates are opened wide, Æneas at their head, a chates by his side. Next these, the Trojan leaders rode along, last follows in the rear Arcadian throng. Young Pallas shone conspicuous o'er the rest, gilded his arms, embroidered was his vest. So, from the seas, exerts his radiant head the star by whom the lights of heaven are led, shakes from his rosy locks the pearly dews, dispels the darkness, and the day renews. The trembling wives the walls and turrets crowd, and follow, with their eyes, the dusty cloud, which winds disperse by fits, and shew from far the blaze of arms, and shields, and shining war. The troops, drawn up in beautiful array, o'er heathy plains, pursue the ready way. Repeated peals of shouts are heard around, the neighing coursers answer to the sound, and shake with horny hoofs the solid ground. The greenwood shade, for long religion known, stands by the streams that wash the Tuscan town, encompassed round with gloomy hills above, which add a holy horror to the grove. The first inhabitants of Grecian blood, that sacred forest to Sylvanus vowed, the guardian of their flocks and fields, and paid their due devotions on his annual day. Not far from hence, along the river's side, intent secure, the Tuscan troops abide, by Tarchon led. Now, from a rising ground, Æneas cast his wondering eyes around, and all the Tyrian army had in sight, stretched on the spacious plain from left to right. Thither his warlike train the Trojan led, refreshed his men, and wearied horses fed. Meantime the mother goddess, crowned with charms, breaks through the clouds, and brings the fated arms. Within a winding vale she finds her son, on the cool river's banks, reared alone. She shews her heavenly form without disguise, and gives herself to his desiring eyes. Behold, she said, perform it in every part, my promise made, and Vulcan's labored art. Now seek, secure, the Latian enemy, and haughty Turnus to the field defy. She said, and, having first her son embraced, the radiant arms beneath an oak she placed. Proud of the gift, he rolled his greedy sight around the work, and gazed it with vast delight. He lifts, he turns, he poises, and admires the crested helm, that vomits radiant fires. His hands the fatal sword and corselet hold, one keen with tempered steel, one stiff with gold. Both ample, flaming both, and beamy bright, so shines a cloud, when edged with adverse light. He shakes the pointed spear, and longs to try the plated cuishes on his manly thigh, but most admires the shield's mysterious mold, and Roman triumphs rising on the gold. For these, embossed, the heavenly smith had wrought, not in the rolls of future fate untaught, the wars in order, and the race divine of warriors issuing from the Julian line. The cave of Mars was dressed with mossy greens, there, by the wolf, were laid the martial twins. Intrepid on her swelling dugs they hung, the foster dam lolled out her fawning tongue. They sucked secure, while, bending back her head, she licked their tender limbs, and formed them as they fed. Not far from thence new Rome appears, with games projected for the rape of Sabine dames. The pit resounds with shrieks, a war succeeds, for breach of public faith, and unexampled deeds. Here for revenge the Sabine troops contend, the Romans there with arms the prey defend. Wearied with tedious war, at length they cease, and both the kings and kingdoms plight to peace. The friendly chiefs before Jove's altar stand, both armed, with each a charger in his hand. A fatted sow for sacrifice is led, with imprecations on the perjured head. Near this, the traitor Mecius, stretched between 4 fiery steeds, is dragged along the green, by Tullus's doom. The brambles drink his blood, and his torn limbs are left the vulture's food. There, Porcina to Rome proud Tarquin brings, and would by force restore the banished kings. One tyrant for his fellow tyrant fights, the Roman youth assert their native rights. Before the town the Tuscan army lies, to win by famine, or by fraud surprise. Their king, half threatening, half disdaining stood, while Cocles broke the bridge, and stemmed the flood. The captive maids there tempt the raging tide, scaped from their chains, with Clolia for their guide. High on a rock heroic Manlius stood, to guard the temple, and the temple's god. Then Rome was poor, and there you might behold the palace thatched with straw, now roofed with gold. The silver goose before the shining gate there flew, and, by her cackle, savoured the state. She told the Gauls approach, approaching Gauls, obscure night, ascend, and seize the walls. The gold assembled well their yellow hair, and golden chains on their white necks they wear. Gold are their vests, long alpine spears they wield, and their left arm sustains a length of shield. Hard by, the leaping Salian priests advance, and naked throw the streets the mad Percy dance, in caps of wool, the targus drop it from heaven. Here modest matrons, in soft litters driven, to pay their vows in solemn pomp appear, and odorous gums in their chaste hands they bear. Far hence removed, the Stygian seats are seen, pains of the damned, and punished Catiline hung on a rock the traitor, and, around, the Furies hissing from the nether ground. Apart from these, the happy souls he draws, and Cato's Holy Ghost dispensing laws. Betwixt the quarters flows a golden sea, but foaming surges there in silver play. The dancing dolphins with their tails divide the glittering waves, and cut the precious tide. Amid the main, 2 mighty fleets engage their brazen beaks, opposite with equal rage. Actium surveys the well-disputed prize, Leucate's watery plain with foamy billows fries. Young Caesar, on the stern, in armor bright, here leads the Romans and their gods to fight. His beamy temples shoot their flames afar, and o'er his head is hung the Julian star. Agrippa seconds him, with prosper scales, and, with propitious gods, his foes assails. A naval crown, that binds his manly brows, the happy fortune of the fight foreshows. Ranged on the line opposite, Antonius brings barbarian aids, and troops of eastern kings, Arabians near, and Bactrians from afar, of tongues discordant, and a mingled war. And, rich in gaudy robes, amidst the strife, his ill fate follows him Egyptian wife. Moving they fight, with oars and forky prows the froth is gathered, and the water glows. It seems, as if the Cyclades again were rooted up, and justled in the main, or floating mountains meet, such is the fierce encounter of the fleet. Fireballs are thrown, and pointed javelins fly. The fields of Neptune take a purple dye. The queen herself, amidst the loud alarms, with cymbals tossed her fainting soldiers' swarms, full as she was, who had not yet divined her cruel fate, nor saw the snakes behind. Our country gods, the monsters of the sky, great Neptune, Pallas, and love's queen defy. The dog Anubis barks, but barks in vain, nor longer dares oppose ethereal train. Mars in the middle of the shining shield is gravid, and strides along the liquid field. The deary souse from heaven with swift ascent, and discord, dyed in blood, with garments rent, divides the priests. Her steps Bellona treads, and shakes her iron rod above their heads. This scene, Apollo, from his action height, pours down his arrows. At his winged flight the trembling Indians and Egyptians yield, and soft Sabaeans quit the watery field. The fatal mistress hoists her silken sails, and, shrinking from the fight, invokes the gales. Aghast she looks, and heaves her breast for breath, panting, and pale with fear of future death. The god had figured her as driven along by winds and waves, and scudding thro' the throng. Just opposite, sad Nilus opens wide his arms and ample bosom to the tide, and spreads his mantle o'er the winding coast, in which he wraps his queen, and hides the flying host. The victor to the gods his thanks expressed, and Rome, triumphant, with his presence blessed. 300 temples in the town he placed, with spoils and altars every temple gracked. 3 shining nights, and 3 succeeding days, the fields resound with shouts, the streets with praise, the domes with songs, the theatres with plays. All altars fling. Before each altar lies, drenched in his gore, the destined sacrifice. Great Caesar sits sublime upon his throne, before Apollo's porch of Parian stone, accepts the presents vowed for victory, and hangs the monumental crowns on high. Vast crowds of vanquished nations march along, various in arms, in habit, and in tongue. Here, Mulciber assigns the proper place for Carians, and ungirt Numidian race, then ranks the Thracians in the second row, with Scythians, expert in the dart and bow. And here the Tamid Euphrates humbly glides, and there the Rhine submits her swelling tides, and proud Araxes, whom no bridge could bind. The Danes' unconquered offspring march behind, and Morini, the last of humankind. These figures, on the shield divinely wrought, by Vulcan labored, and by Venus fraught, with joy and wonder, fill the hero's thought. Unknown the names, he yet admires the grace, and bears aloft the fame and fortune of his race.